So this hour, we're bringing you Wednesday's pre-trial hearing for Karen Read. This is quite a case to watch in Boston. If you haven't heard about it, fear not. We're going to tell you everything you need to know on this show right now. So she's accused of murdering her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who was a Boston police officer. They were at a party. There was a lot of drinking going on, a lot of police at this party. It was a very snowy night, and she's said to have hit him with her car and killed him. That's how the Boston police who investigated this says that's what happened. But her defense team says, oh no, it's not even close. They say that there were people at that home who attacked him, that he was attacked by a dog at that home and left for dead out in the snow. And they're saying that the prosecutors aren't turning over evidence that's important to their case. So here's a little more from the defense team. That's Karen Read sitting there with one of her lawyers. Let's listen to more of the arguments. These guys are good. They're really aggressive.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. May it please the court. We are, as indicated in our papers, we are seeking summonses, and this is dealing with the animal control issue, that Rule 17 motion. We're seeking summonses directed at two entities, the Canton Animal Control and the Canton Town Clerk, both. We believe they both have records. We know they both have records. These are records that we need, the defense needs, to shine a light on Karen Read's innocence. These are records that are essential to our theory of the case, and these are records that we have no other option to get but through a summons. They've indicated to us they have the records, but they need a court order. They need some sort of a summons. Your Honor, in furtherance of this motion, I want to talk for a quick second about a couple of undisputed facts. Undisputed fact number one, on January 29th, 2022, Officer John O'Keefe was found dead in the yard of Brian Albert at his house at 34 Fairview in Canton. That is undisputed fact, where he was found dead and what the circumstances were surrounding that death are why we're here now. Second undisputed fact, when John O'Keefe was found, he had this set of wounds on his right arm. The medical examiner indicated that these wounds were concomitant with his death in terms of the temporal, the time that he died. These were wounds that he suffered at or near the time that he died. And the Commonwealth looks at these wounds and says, there's nothing to see here. Why are we looking at this? This is, you're following a red herring, basically. This is just a road rash. This means nothing. It has no impact on our case one way or the other. This is, according to the Commonwealth, simply a set of injuries that John O'Keefe suffered at the hands of being struck by a moving vehicle. Well, first, I would ask the common sense question, does this look like a road rash? I mean, the court's got years, decades of experience, life experience and legal experience. Of course this doesn't look like a road rash. It's not a road rash that any of us have ever seen. Or does it look more like claw marks and bite marks from an animal, which is exactly what they are? Second, if it was a road rash, where's the rest of the road rash? John O'Keefe had one set of injuries like this. Deep scratches, deep puncture wounds on his arm, on his right arm only, from mid-biceps to mid-forearm and no other place. For instance, mid-biceps and mid-forearm that you might put in front of your face or your body if a large animal was attacking you, resulting in these wounds. Why are the wounds confined just to his right arm? What about all the other pointy bits of a human body if someone is rolled under a car or rolled in gravel because of the car? What about the shoulders? What about the knees? What about the ankles? What about the elbows? None of that exists. These are the only wounds. They're confined to his right arm, and they're deep scratch wounds, puncture wounds that are indicative of claw marks and bite marks from a large animal. And third, what about the Commonwealth's own expert? She has to have opined about this, correct? She has to have said during the grand jury, I mean, this was a full-throated investigation surrounding the potential murder of a police officer. What did the Commonwealth's own expert say? First of all, she was never asked by the Commonwealth during the course of the grand jury about the injuries. It took a grand juror actually asking the question of the witness, and she said, no, I cannot say that is a road rash. There's certainly not enough evidence to suggest that these wounds are consistent with a road rash. Well, she had to have at least talked about the fact that it was an animal, right? She had to. The Commonwealth had to have asked that question. She actually said nothing about whether or not that's consistent with an animal, because the Commonwealth very particularly did not ever pose that question. But we did. We hired one of the preeminent medical examiners in the country, a doctor by the name of Frank Sheridan, and he wasn't some deputy medical examiner. Dr. Frank Sheridan was the medical examiner for San Bernardino County in California, with more than 12,000 autopsies under his belt, the supervising medical examiner for one of the largest counties in California, and he concluded to a scientific certainty that these wounds are from an animal attack. Period. Full stop. So, what do we know about animals and the Alberts? Which is exactly where Officer John O'Keefe was found dead. In February of 2017, we know that the Alberts had a dog. There's a photograph of Brian Albert with the dog, Chloe, in the foreground. By 2019, the Albert family had registered ownership of that German Shepherd. Moving on to 2022, in January of 2022, specifically January 29th, John O'Keefe suffers these animal puncture wounds, these animal scratches, these animal bite marks that are heretofore and up to this date, today, completely unexplained by the Commonwealth. By May of 2022, Karen Reed's defense team starts asking questions about this animal, about these injuries, about the dog, about what dog existed at the Alberts house. Where is the dog? We started inquiring pretty significantly. That same month, amazingly, the Alberts informed the Cat and Animal Control that the dog was remarkably and mysteriously rehomed. The dog was gotten rid of. And to date, the Commonwealth has yet, as my colleague just mentioned, has yet to release the tissue samples to us for DNA testing to determine if there's evidence in these wounds of a canine attack, which we believe there will be. During that grand jury testimony, Brian Albert admitted to three things. Number one, he admitted that he owned a large German Shepherd. His words, not mine. A large German Shepherd. Number two, he admitted that the dog was at his home on the night John O'Keefe, early morning hours, John O'Keefe was killed on January 29th, 2022. And the dog, according to his own testimony, was inside the house and never in the front yard, which is where John O'Keefe's body was ultimately found. And the third thing that he admitted was that the dog was, quote, not great with strangers, end quote. That's a dog owner's euphemism for the dog bites, the dog attacks, the dog is mean or can be mean. So why wouldn't the Commonwealth ask about these injuries? Why wouldn't the Commonwealth inquire, as we have been inquiring, about the nature of these injuries and their significance in terms of John O'Keefe's death? It's because they know that the answer completely obliterates their case. Their theory of homicide would fold if they got the true answers to these questions. The answer exculpates Karen Reed, and the answer inculpates Brian Albert. That's because if that dog was inside the house that night, not on the front lawn, not in the front yard, but inside the house, and these injuries were suffered or sustained at the time John O'Keefe was killed, then that means John O'Keefe was inside the house when he was killed. And it also means that his body was moved. That's consistent with the facts that we also know to be true, which is not one person that was in that house and ultimately exited that house from that party that night, not one saw John O'Keefe's body laying in the cold in the front yard. And that's because he wasn't there yet. Multiple people walked out of the house, multiple people who would have no other reason, would have no reason to lie about that. A 200-pound man, 6'2", lying in the front yard on a light dusting of snow in dark clothing. Not one person saw him.
Boy, oh boy, are you persuaded? Gotta tell you, this is intriguing stuff the defense is putting forth here. Is there any truth to it? Tweet us. Let us know what you think about this case. At Court TV is our network handle. At Julie Court TV is mine. Loving your tweets this morning. Glad you're waking up with us. We're going to squeeze in a break. Letting you know we're following everything that's cooking today in the legal world, folks. Cult mom case heating up. You see the clock ticking on your screen till our next update. The jury's coming in soon, and we're going to continue. There's more to the Reed hearing in Boston right after this. Quiet Colorado community rocked by a tragedy.
11-year-old Gannon Stout disappeared from his home.
Gannon's stepmother, Letitia Stout, is charged with his murder.
Stout allegedly killed her stepson and then drove his body across the country.
Now the jury will decide her fate.
She has a tough road ahead.
As a family searches for justice.
She will pay 100% for this heinous thing she done.
The stepmother murder trial. Live coverage continues tomorrow morning only on Court TV.
People caught up in a plan to commit murder. But just who is the puppet? And who's pulling the strings?
Accomplice to Murder with Fanny Politan. Premieres Sunday night, 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice. I'm Julie Grant. So here's what's cooking right now at this hour. Court set to resume any moment in Idaho in the Doomsday Cult Mom murder trial. Things are winding down for the state of Idaho. We expect Cult Mom's niece, Melanie Pulowski, used to be Melanie Boudreau, and she was married to Brandon Boudreau. She's supposed to be testifying today. That should be good because her and Cult Mom were very close. Those two were tight. So we'll see if she turns on her like so many other people have. And I got to tell you, I am still not convinced that Mr. Doomsday won't turn on her. He's got a court hearing scheduled for today, a status conference for his case that was severed from hers, set to happen this afternoon in the same courtroom, because remember, it's the same judge presiding. I'm still not convinced he won't roll on her and give testimony for the state of Idaho, but we'll see. We will see what happens, and we'll give you an update on Idaho every half hour throughout the day here once things get cooking. In the meantime, do we have a doozy of a case in Boston, folks. Police officer John O'Keefe dead in a snowstorm, out left in the cold. The allegation from the state is that his girlfriend hit him with her car, left him for dead, but the defense team says no. They were at a party, lots of people were drinking, lots of cops were there, and they say there's a big cover-up going on. And so let's go back into more of this hearing. They just showed a photograph where you see the victim's arm, and the attorney made the great point, it doesn't look like road rash. It looks like bite marks and claw marks, and they want to get the DNA of the dog that lived at the home, because that dog has since been rehomed. They want to get its DNA. Let's watch some more.
But if John O'Keefe was beaten unconscious in, for instance, the basement of that house, and later moved to the front yard after the guests had left, there's your answer as to why no one saw him. And it also answers two other questions which are looming in this case. Why would Brian Albert rip out the floor of his basement months after John O'Keefe was killed? The second question, why would he sell his house? So in the months following John O'Keefe's death, the dog has been gotten rid of, got rid of the evidence in the basement, got rid of the house, the crime scene itself. Your Honor, I would submit to the court that evidence is literally being destroyed right under our nose. It's been reported that the federal authorities have now gotten involved in the circumstances surrounding this case and have impaneled a grand jury, a federal grand jury, to investigate some of these circumstances. But Karen Reed should not have to wait for the feds to figure out which heads should roll. I would implore the court, now is the time for the court to take some action and give us the tools, the defense the tools that we need to fully investigate this case. We need these records to track down this German Shepherd, if it's still alive, which clearly is an open question. Our understanding is, at least up to this point, is that the dog was not only rehomed, but rehomed out of state, out of the jurisdiction of this court and out of the reach of the defense, or at least that was the attempt. We need those records to find where that dog is. If the dog still exists, we need a saliva sample, we need a hair sample, we need something, and then we need the Commonwealth to give us the tissue samples that were taken at the time so that they can be compared. This is vital to the defense. We ask that the summonses at issue for the two entities that we've described, those summonses issue, the request clearly meets the Lampron standards. Number one, it's relevant evidence. Number two, we definitely need a subpoena or a summons. They will not provide the information without a court order. Number three, this information is necessary for our defense. And number four, contrary to what the Commonwealth constantly says, oh, well, this is just fishing, I think we've established this is not just fishing. We got a fish on the hook. We just need the court to help us reel it in. I will submit on further oral argument regarding the issues or the summonses surrounding the animal control and town clerk. If the court has any further questions about those, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I can certainly give the court a preview of the second Rule 17 motion, which deals with the phone records and the actual phone of Brian Albert. But I believe the court has indicated, and we've suggested, that an evidentiary hearing is in order.
As I understand it, the parties have agreed for an evidentiary hearing, and we rearranged our schedule a bit so that we could accommodate you.
That's perfect.
Okay.
The only thing I would say in furtherance of that, very briefly, is the Commonwealth has suggested that Rule 17 is just sort of a regurgitation of something that we filed back in, I think it was September, that could not be further from the truth. There is new information. There's dozens of pieces of new information that we have.
What I'm going to do because of that, let's let Mr. Lally respond to your remarks on the...
Of course.